A billionaire stranded on the roadside, a homeless black man offering unexpected kindness. What happens next will leave you speechless. When Austin, a wealthy businessman, meets Gavin, a homeless man with a mysterious past, their lives take a shocking turn. But when Austin uncovers Gavin's truth, he's forced to question everything he believes about success, race, and fate. Prepare for a story that will challenge perspectives, stir emotions, and reveal the power of true humanity.
The rain poured down mercilessly, drumming against the sleek body of Austin Reynolds' luxury car. He cursed under his breath, staring at his useless phone. No signal, no help. He had never been in this situation before. A billionaire stranded in the worst part of the city, in a neighborhood he'd only ever heard about in statistics and crime reports. His expensive suit was already damp, and frustration grew in his chest. Across the street, under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, a man sat against the wall of an abandoned building. His clothes were tattered, his beard unkempt, and his face bore the marks of years of hardship. Gavin had been watching the rich man struggle for the past 10 minutes. He had seen people like him before, people who never noticed men like Gavin unless it was to avoid them. Austin let out another frustrated sigh and slammed the car door. He wasn't about to walk these streets alone at night, and no taxi was coming through here anytime soon. That's when he heard a voice. "You need help?" Austin turned sharply, finding himself face to face with the homeless man. Instinctively, he took a step back. His upbringing told him to be wary, but something in Gavin's eyes was different. There was no threat, just sincerity. Austin hesitated. "My car broke down. My phone's dead." Gavin nodded, glancing at the vehicle. "I can take a look. Used to fix cars before..." He trailed off, his voice laced with something Austin couldn't quite place. Austin hesitated again. Could he trust this man? But what choice did he have? "Fine," he muttered. "Just don't make it worse." Gavin chuckled, shaking his head as he rolled up his sleeves. "Relax, man. I know what I'm doing." As Gavin worked under the hood, Austin observed him. He noticed the scars on the man's hands and the quiet precision in his movements. This wasn't just some random homeless man. There was a story here. 10 minutes later, the engine roared back to life. Austin exhaled in relief. "Guess you do know what you're doing." Gavin wiped his hands on his torn jeans. "Told you." Austin reached into his wallet, pulling out a $100 bill. "Here, for your trouble." Gavin stared at the money but made no move to take it. "I didn't do it for money," he said quietly. Austin frowned. "Then why?" Gavin met his gaze. "Because once, someone helped me when I was down. I just do the same when I can." For the first time that night, Austin felt something shift inside him. There was more to this man than met the eye, and he was determined to find out what. Austin sat behind the wheel, his hands gripping the steering wheel, but he didn't drive off. Something about Gavin lingered in his mind. He had met thousands of people, business people, politicians, celebrities, but none had turned down money so quickly. It was almost unsettling. He rolled down his window. "Hey," he called out. Gavin, who had already started walking back toward his usual sleeping spot, turned around. "Yeah?" Austin hesitated. "You hungry?" Gavin raised an eyebrow. "You offering?" Austin nodded. "There's a diner a few blocks away. Come with me." For a moment, Gavin seemed to weigh his options. There was no reason for this rich man to help him, but something about Austin's tone didn't feel like pity. It felt like curiosity. "All right," Gavin shrugged, "but I picked the place. Rich folks always go for the overpriced spots." Austin smirked. "Fair enough. Get in." The diner was small and run down, the place Austin would have never set foot in before tonight. The smell of greasy burgers and burnt coffee filled the air. Gavin walked in like he belonged, while Austin felt out of place in his expensive suit. A few people looked up, surprised to see a billionaire and a homeless man sitting together in a booth. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, placed 2 menus down. "What can I get you boys?" "Burger, fries, and a coffee," Gavin said without looking up. Austin scanned the menu, realizing he had no idea what to order. "Same," he said finally. As they waited for their food, Austin studied Gavin. His clothes were worn, but his posture was straight. His hands were rough, but they weren't idle. He kept fidgeting as if he wasn't used to sitting still. "So," Austin said, leaning forward, "you fixed my car like a pro, turned down my money, and now we're here. What's your story?" Gavin took a sip of his water, then chuckled. "Man, you don't want to hear my story." "Try me," Gavin sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "I wasn't always like this. Used to have a job, a family. I was a mechanic and had my own shop, but life doesn't always go the way you plan." Austin waited, sensing there was more. "Got sick," Gavin continued. "Medical bills piled up. Lost my shop, lost my home. My wife, she tried to stick around, but it got too much for her. One day she packed up and left. After that I stopped trying. Just ended up here." Austin remained silent. He had heard stories of people losing everything, but it never felt real until now. "You ever try to get back on your feet?" Austin asked. Gavin let out a dry laugh. "You think it's that easy? You ever try getting a job when you don't have an address? When you haven't showered in days? People don't give guys like me second chances." Austin looked down at the table, thinking. He had built his entire empire on second chances, on investors who believed in him when others didn't. And now, sitting across from him, was a man who had once been like him, but never got that chance. Their food arrived, and they ate in silence. But in Austin's mind, a plan was already forming. A plan that would change Gavin's life forever. Austin leaned back in the booth, watching Gavin devour his meal. The man ate like he hadn't had a proper meal in days, which, considering his situation, was probably true. Austin wasn't the type to act impulsively. His entire career was built on strategy, careful calculations, and well-thought-out decisions. But something about Gavin's story struck a chord deep within him. "Gavin," Austin said, setting down his coffee, "what if I told you I can help you get back on your feet?" Gavin wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and smirked. "I'd say you're either crazy or feeling guilty about something." Austin chuckled. "Neither. I don't believe in charity. I believe in investments, and I think you're worth investing in." Gavin raised an eyebrow. "Investing? Man, I'm not some stock or company you can buy into." Austin leaned forward. "No, but you're a man with skills. You fix my car in minutes. You ran a business before, and life knocked you down, but it didn't break you." He paused. "That tells me you've still got fight left in you." Gavin studied him for a long moment. "And what do you want in return?" Austin shrugged. "Nothing. Just take the chance." Gavin let out a dry laugh. "You really think you can just hand me a new life?" "No," Austin admitted, "but I can give you a stepping stone." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key card, sliding it across the table. "What's this?" Gavin asked, staring at it. "A hotel room," Austin said. "A warm bed, hot shower, and food for a few days. Use it or don't. It's up to you. But if you do, meet me at this address in 3 days." He scribbled something on a napkin and pushed it toward Gavin. Gavin hesitated, staring at the keycard like it was a trick. He had been on the streets long enough to know that people didn't just offer help without expecting something in return. "And if I don't show up?" Gavin asked. Austin smirked. "Then I'll assume you're not ready." Gavin exhaled, his fingers hovering over the keycard. He had spent years being invisible, ignored by people like Austin, And now a billionaire was sitting across from him, offering him something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Finally, he picked up the keycard and pocketed it. "All right," he said, his voice quiet. "Guess I'll see you in 3 days." Austin nodded, satisfied. He dropped a few bills on the table and stood up. "Take care, Gavin." As he walked out of the diner, Austin knew one thing. This wasn't just about helping a homeless man. This was about changing a life, and neither of them knew just how much their worlds were about to shift. Gavin stood outside the towering hotel, gripping the keycard in his pocket. The warm lights from the lobby illuminated the sidewalk, casting his shadow against the pavement. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he belonged somewhere. "This is crazy," he muttered under his breath. He had been sleeping on park benches and cold alleyways for so long that entering luxury felt unnatural. What if it was a trick? What if Austin was playing some rich man's game, offering him hope only to snatch it away? But the thought of a hot shower, a warm bed, and a meal he didn't have to beg for was too strong to ignore. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The woman at the front desk eyed him warily, her painted nails clicking against the keyboard as she checked the system. Gavin had seen that look before, judgment wrapped in politeness. "I have a reservation," Gavin said, sliding the keycard across the counter. She hesitated, but then saw the name linked to the room. Her face changed instantly. "Oh, yes, Mr. Austin Rhodes reserved this for you." She handed him a key. "Room 1803, elevators are to your right." Gavin exhaled. There was no questioning, no security called on him, just access to something he never thought he'd have again. The moment he stepped into the suite, Gavin felt his chest tighten. The space was massive: marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a bed that looked softer than any place he had ever laid his head on. He touched the clean white sheets, half expecting them to vanish. He walked into the bathroom, turned the faucet on, and watched hot water rush out as steam filled the air. It's an accurate shower, not a sink in a gas station or a rainstorm on the street. Slowly, he undressed and stepped under the stream of water, letting it wash away years of dirt, exhaustion, and survival. For the first time in a long time, Gavin felt human again. The following day, Gavin stared at his reflection in the mirror. He barely recognized himself. His beard was trimmed, his clothes were fresh, and the exhaustion in his eyes seemed lighter. 3 days. That's what Austin had given him. The napkin with Austin's address sat on the bedside table. Gavin picked it up, his hands tightening around the paper. He could walk away, disappear into the city, and never see Austin again. Or he could take a risk that his life wasn't meant to end in the streets. With a deep breath, Gavin grabbed his coat and stepped out the door. He was ready. Gavin's heart pounded as he stood outside the massive estate. Austin's house, or instead mansion, was nothing like anything he had seen up close. The gates were taller than any building he had ever lived in, and the driveway seemed to stretch forever. He could turn around, walk away. No one would stop him, but something inside told him he had to see this through. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward and pressed the buzzer. A moment later, a voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes?" It's Gavin." Silence. Then, the gates clicked open. As he stepped inside, the sheer grandeur of the place overwhelmed him. Marble floors, chandeliers, paintings that cost more than his life's worth. Austin appeared from the hallway, dressed in a tailored suit but without the arrogance Gavin expected. "You came," Austin said, a small smile on his face. "You gave me 3 days. Figured I owed you at least a conversation." Austin gestured toward the living room. "Then, let's talk." They sat across from each other. Gavin felt out of place, but Austin didn't care about appearances. "So, tell me, Austin said, leaning forward. "How did you end up on the streets?" Gavin hesitated. No one had ever cared to ask before. He took a deep breath. "I wasn't always homeless. I had a job, a life. But one mistake changed everything." Austin listened intently as Gavin unraveled his past. He had once been a construction worker, making an honest living. But after being falsely accused of stealing from a site, he lost everything: his job, his apartment, his dignity. No one believed a black man over a wealthy site manager. He tried to fight back, but the system wasn't built for men like him. He fell into a cycle, losing jobs, sleeping in shelters, and eventually losing hope. Austin's expression darkened. "That's unbelievable." Gavin let out a bitter chuckle. "Not really. It happens more than you think." Silence filled the room. Then, Austin did something unexpected. "I want to help you," he said. Gavin stiffened. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity. It's a second chance." Austin leaned in. "You helped me when you didn't have to. Now I want to do the same for you." Gavin eyed him warily. "What exactly are you offering?" Austin smirked. "A job, a fresh start, and maybe a way to rewrite your story." Gavin's breath hitched. No one had ever said those words to him before. Gavin sat in stunned silence, Austin's words hanging in the air. A job, a fresh start. It sounded too good to be true. "Why?" Gavin finally asked, his voice laced with skepticism. "Why would you do this for me?" Austin leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Because I see something in you. Something the world has ignored." He exhaled. "And because I know what it's like to lose everything." Gavin's eyes narrowed. "You? Lose everything?" Austin nodded. "You think I was born into this wealth?" He gestured around the mansion. "My father was a ruthless businessman. He built an empire but never had time for his family. When he died, I inherited everything. But I had no idea how to handle it. I was reckless, made mistakes, trusted the wrong people." Gavin studied him. "So, what changed?" Austin smirked. "Someone gave me a second chance. An old mentor took me in when I was at my lowest and taught me how to rebuild. Now, I want to do the same for you." Gavin's heart pounded. He had spent years being ignored, judged, and left behind. Could he trust Austin? "What's the catch?" he asked cautiously. "No catch," Austin said. "You work for me? I'll give you a position at one of my companies, a place to stay, and a real chance to get back on your feet." Gavin clenched his fists. The streets had taught him that nothing came without a price, but looking into Austin's eyes, he saw something rare: genuine sincerity. After a long pause, Gavin exhaled. "All right, I'll do it." Austin grinned. "Good. Welcome to your new life." That night, for the first time in years, Gavin didn't sleep on a cold sidewalk or in a crowded shelter. He had a warm bed, clean clothes, and something even more valuable: hope. But he didn't know that the biggest twist was yet to come. Gavin adjusted the crisp suit Austin had given him, still not used to the feel of expensive fabric against his skin. It had been weeks since he left the streets, and every day felt like a dream. A new job, a place to live, and most of all, respect. Today, Austin called him to his office for something important, something life-changing. As Gavin entered the billionaire's luxurious office, he found Austin sitting behind his massive desk, a thick file in front of him. His expression was unreadable. "Sit down, Gavin," Austin said. Gavin hesitated but obeyed. He had no idea what was coming. Austin pushed the file toward him. "I had my team look into your past. You deserve to know the truth." Gavin's heart pounded. "The truth?" Austin nodded. "About your family." Gavin's breath caught. He had no family, or so he thought. He had been abandoned as a child, left to fend for himself. But as he opened the file, his eyes widened in shock. Inside were old documents, photographs, and, most shocking of all, a birth certificate, his birth certificate. Gavin's hands trembled as he read the name of his biological father. James Caldwell. His blood ran cold. That name was familiar, too familiar. He looked up at Austin, his voice barely a whisper. "James Caldwell, your mentor?" Austin's eyes softened. "Yes, my mentor. The man who gave me a second chance was your father." Gavin's world tilted. He couldn't breathe. His father, whom he had never known, had been the man who had once saved Austin, and now Austin was returning that favor to his son. Tears welled in Gavin's eyes. For years, he had felt like he belonged nowhere. But now he had a history, a connection, a reason why Austin had seen something in him. Austin placed a comforting hand on Gavin's shoulder. "I don't believe in coincidences, Gavin. I believe in fate. And I believe your father would have wanted you to have this." He slid another document across the desk. Gavin picked it up, his heart nearly stopping as he read the words. "Transfer of ownership. Austin Industries." Austin smiled. "Half of my company is now yours," Gavin gasped. I can't accept this." "You can," Austin said firmly, "because you're not just some homeless man I helped. You're my mentor's son, and I owe him everything." Gavin wiped his eyes, overwhelmed by emotions he had never felt before. For years he had been ignored, discarded, and unseen. But today, he was someone. He had a name, a family, and a future, and it all started with one act of kindness. Moral of the story: never judge a person by their circumstances. Life has a way of bringing people together in the most unexpected ways. Enjoyed this story? Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. Let's spread the message of hope and unity together. Thanks, and take care.